It's nothing flashy. It's just two people chopping it up about topics that matter, but are not necessarily known to the masses of people, right? And so today, I know that we could probably spend hours upon hours kind of like uncovering your past, uncovering your knowledge, your wisdom, and things of that nature. But just to kind of start off, guys, this is Armando Lawrence Jr. I'm the host for today. Jesus Flores, also known as J Flo to some of the kids in the neighborhood.
Okay. All right.
And the name of the show is Drippy Faucet Podcast. I'm very honored to have you today on the show. I'm excited. I'm excited to kind of get to know you a little bit better and ask you the questions that I've always wanted to ask you.
Okay.
And so I finally got you. I've been trying to get this man on the show for a long time.
Captivated.
But many different things have happened along the way that haven't really made it so easy for you to be on today. But I was able to get you, and let's go ahead and get started. Where's your hometown?
Well, I was born in Boyle Heights.
Boyle Heights.
I used to say East LA, but I have some primas who always remind me specifically it's Boyle Heights, Mondo.
So what is the difference?
Oh, okay, so, on the one hand, it's a technical difference of the east side is split up between the city, which is Boyle Heights, and actually a couple of little sub-communities called Logan and Hollenbeck. And then the county side, as we keep going east of Indiana, is that would be East Los Angeles, east of Los Angeles, the eastern end of the county.
Okay.
But the barrio, as I grew up, was to me, stretched from the river, that 1st and 4th and 6th Street, all the way out here, and it goes all the way to Montebello.
Okay.
In my day, it wasn't, and when I mean barrio, I'm talking about Mexicanos, raza.
Okay.
Right? It wasn't quite that extensive as it is today, but so to me, it's the whole east side, but some people are real specific about.
Right.
I've met people say, I've never been to East LA. I've lived my whole life in Boyle Heights. And then I met a dude that I was working with, and he says, I went to Garfield and I've never passed the other side of Indiana to Boyle Heights. But okay.
Well, they have their little subtleties and they have their little technicalities. But to me, as a Southeast LA individual, Huntington Park individual, it was always like East LA.
Okay.
Like we just generally thought of it as East Los, but I know that within it, then people are gonna have their little differences.
Specifics, yeah.
What is a memory that you have from your childhood that you think was one of those things that really shaped your adolescence?
Well, my adolescence?
Yeah, teenage years.
Okay, well, let me see if I could. Okay, so my teenage years were opposite my childhood. Okay. But one fed into the other.
Okay, can you explain that?
So as a child, I was very quiet, calladito. My mom used to say when I was real little, muy inocente. And when I was a teenager, I was a malcriado. I became quite a rebel as a teenager. As a youngster, I was just very timid, and maybe for a variety of things that I'm still exploring myself. But partly also, I couldn't find my voice. And my dad and my mom saw it, but they struggled. They knew I needed that, but they struggled, and I think they also struggled, now that I reflect, because they know that sometimes you can find your voice in a negative way.
Okay.
And that's what happened to me.
Okay.
I ended up really getting the essence of using my voice, but in a negative way. And don't want to ruin it for other questions you may have for me, pero I'm still finding my voice.
Right.
I'm still, to me, that's part of my camino.
How did you, in that path, that camino as you're talking about, how did you find that voice, whether positive or negative?
So, I was always inspired, actually, since I was a kid, especially with strong influences from my dad. He was born in Mexico, Sonora. My mom's parents were both from Mexico, very proud. And I was always inspired by heroes of Mexico, heroes from history around the world, but especially Mexico. And I wanted to be like them. And they all seemed to have a voice, one way or another. But I was very shy, very quiet, and I didn't know how to do that. And then in '68, when I was about 13, my dad, 12, 13, something like that, my dad I discovered was part of the civil rights movement, the Chicano movement in East LA. And from him, his generation, to the people just a few years older than me, walking out of the high schools in East LA, like, wow, there's a voice, a voice for La Raza, a voice for youth. And I wanted that. And eventually I moved into that area. I was in and out of it, let's put it that way, because there's more to the story. But even then, I didn't quite find, I wasn't one of those on a protest line. I didn't lead shouting, and like you might see in a movie, but I was there. I was a worker, I was a rank and file organizer. I worked under these leaders.
Right.
And I learned, I began to explore my voice a little bit, but I would always feel real, tenía vergüenza. I was, it was a fear. It was a fear.
Yeah, I get it.
And, but, like I said, I was kind of in and out because when I was doing other things, I was hanging out with a lot of guys in school. They weren't exactly angels, santos, and I started to find a voice there in that community,
right,
so to speak. So make a long story short, I went from, in my day, what we called the dressed up look of East LA, the Continentals. I ended up drifting from that to the choros, to the homies.
Yeah.
And I got involved with the clique, with the neighborhood. And I started to develop a voice out, and I consciously knew, I didn't know what was going on. I consciously knew what I was doing, and I knew I was finding a voice. It was in a negative way, but it's what presented itself to me, and I took advantage of it.
But in a sense, I imagine that it was still kind of like empowering.
Yes.
To find a voice. And at the time, did you realize that it was a negative voice, or were you just like super hyped up that it was just a voice? And you were building an identity, and you were like, this is who Armando Lawrence Jr. is.
So, I knew it was a negative voice.
Okay.
But I was also young, full of piss and anger, had a lot of energia, and I wanted a voice, and you know what? So I'll put it like this. One day, I'm with the homies, we're at a community center near Indiana, and a social worker said, hey, if you guys come back next week, I'll buy you hamburguesas, pizzas. I got a social worker from UCLA coming down. She wants to interview you guys. All right, whatever, So we show up. She takes us in one by one. I'm the first one she takes in. We're in a room like this. And her first question was, what is your drug of choice? And
that was the first question she asked?
First question. And I think she was in the School of Psychology or Social Work, I forget which. And I looked at, and I started making things up. I started giving her stories, and I hear you're a gangster, yeah, how many people have you killed? Have you killed anybody? Well, I go. But then I felt at this, so I was BSing her.
Right.
Having fun. And then there was another side of me that started to get very upset that how dare she come in to my hood and assume that we're all gangsters. I don't know if that's what she assumed, but I kind of felt like she was assuming that, and that every gang member had killed somebody. So then I told her, I want to back up, but I want to tell you a true answer. I didn't give you a correct answer the first time around about my drug of choice. She goes, oh, okay. What is it? She goes, my drug of choice is the gang, is my homies, is the connection. And she said, why? I said, because I was always a D and F student in school. I don't know what it's like. Maybe in history, I got a few A's, and then that was it. I don't know what it's like to get a certificate. I don't know what it's like to get honored in class. No one wanted me on their spelling team. And the homies accepted me without any judgment. And I said, even though I know homies that they grow up in that, and that's just the way it is, homies that have to join the neighborhood because for protection, I had a choice. And I chose that. I went with it because it made me feel good here. I go, and that's, if you want to talk about addiction, that was my addiction, to wanting to feel good. And I consciously had to say, fuck what is right, what is wrong. I just want to feel good for a while. I want to know what it feels like to feel good for a while, even if it means I'm kind of doing some dipshit stuff.
Right.
That's how powerful that feeling is. and I went with my feeling. I got tired of feeling hurt,
Right.
feeling like I didn't have a voice. Yeah, it's probably not the most positive voice, but it's a voice, and it was the only avenue at the time that I could really start experimenting.
Right.
I was getting into leadership positions, to use that term, and I liked it. I admit I liked it. It was addictive.
I find it really interesting how sometimes we know that we're doing bad things, but we get a certain rush of good feelings that come from it, right? And I just find it so interesting how that's possible when we know it's wrong, but yet it feels so good.
It feels it's so wrong, and it feels so right. Usually we use that for sexual encounters,
Right.
but it still applies.
Right.
And because of the work I do, when you're marginalized, when you're pushed out, when you're kicked out, when you're left behind, when you're sold to the door, when you're made to feel like your spirit has no value, you're going to find some way to deal with that pain that gives you. And a lot of people I work with have that pain, and they either go from one extreme to the other. They're either like a flicker of light, barely alive, crawled up in some little space somewhere, maybe on their preferred drug or whatever, just not almost barely alive. And others who are like, they're like a bonfire burning everybody and everything up all around them.
Right.
Because they don't know the balance.
Right.
And they're just trying to exist and find value to what is their purpose. And they don't know what it is. And they're struggling to find it, even if they don't consciously, or even if they're not consciously aware of that. They're trying to fulfill a desire of the heart, which is, I think, tied up to other things. But
All right. So along the way, as you started kicking it with the homies, I imagine, this is an assumption, sometimes the homies don't really read books. Sometimes they're not really active in the community in a positive sense, right? So how did you end up aligning yourself back to the Chicano movement, the movement of like the healers, right? The circles, and all these different things that in a sense gave you a different spin in your life or a redirection to take you back onto a path where you were not necessarily going to end up in jail, end up dead, things of that nature.
So because I think I had known some people in the Chicano movement, at a certain point, I forget where I was, but I ran into some Chicano movement people. They were all ex-gangsters or ex-pintos, ex-prisoners, older than me, and they were working with youth, they were working with gangs, and they tried to recruit me. And so I went for it because I already got close to being killed a few times. And I decided, you know what, my parents didn't bring me into this world. They didn't, as they understood it, try to leave the hood to a better way of life as they understood it, so I could end up dead on the streets of East LA. And so I decided, you know what, I want to take myself in a different direction. Now, running into these guys that I knew from before, it was kind of like, the transition was easy because they were homies, but they were homies in a political sense. They were letting go of
they were the conscious homies.
The conscious homies, and that's what we called ourselves, the conscious homies, or sometimes the political homies. And so I could still dress the way I was dressing, but we weren't gangbanging anymore.
Right.
We were doing other things that were kind of like, we were warriors, soldados in a new way, in the way of the movement. The high point of the movement had already kind of come crashing down in the community, and where elements were trying to keep it going. And that's about the time I hooked up with these guys. And
excellent. Today, Armando Lawrence Jr., in 2019, what is the thing that you're mainly curious about? Whether it be a small thing or a big thing, what captivates your mind most of the day, 24/7?
What's going to happen tomorrow? What's going to happen with our community, with all communities? The way things are going, with the environment, with Mother Earth. Just that, on that alone. You know, they're talking about the seas dying. They're talking about the dying off of insects. So I worry about things like that, and I put them in my prayers every day. What's going to happen tomorrow? How do we prepare? How do we deal with it? What are the things I need to be doing? I've been taught and told things, but still to find a practical way to put some of those ideas into practice right now, it's not the easiest thing. It's tough, you know.
So, are you optimistic or are you pessimistic for the future of humanity, and furthermore, the future of this planet?
You know, I kind of find myself feeling both.
I think that's a fair response, but why?
The reason why is because I see what's happening. I see people too that don't make the 6 o'clock news or doing things like what you're doing, like what I'm doing with the fathers, with youth, with our men's circle tonight, with the men I work with in the prisons. And I know there's other people doing great and terrific work. I know those people who are trying to heal the earth. But Native American elders years ago told us that humankind needed to change their ways 20, 30 years ago. Maybe there would be a chance for, how do I put it, for things not to get so out of balance. And some of them said, no, society didn't listen, didn't do what it's going to do. So they said the earth has to remake itself every so often. That's the way they put it. And when there's a birth, it can be violent. And they said the way we've been living, modern society, we're going to complicate that birthing process. And it's going to be difficult for a lot of people. That it's going to be a massive change, as they put it, and that it's happened before. But that this time we're so out of balance. You know, we read about all the time about the plastic in the ocean, the plastic everywhere. We're destroying everything around us. So what's going to happen if this transition takes place like they're talking about? How are we going to continue living? You know, in what way, what shape or form? You know, what about the little children? What about the elders? What about the sick? You know, so you know, I worry about that. At the same time, when I go to my native ceremonies, we're constantly told they go if you want, you can follow the Christian way too. It's going to be like paradise. That this transition is going to birth something that, compared to today, will be like paradise. In so many different ways. Not just ecological, but the way people treat each other, the way people get along.
Yes.
And they say that the warriors right now, they call them the light warriors, are the ones who are trying to heal. And that they're an example of what's to come. But to get there, it's going to be, it's not going to be the easiest.
So in a way, it seems like your logical side is analyzing the data, and based off of that, you're making a conclusion that based on the evidence, it seems like there is no hope for humanity. But, I may be wrong, but your more like spiritual side is kind of thinking that there will be some sort of like metaphysical rebirth of this planet.
Well, they say Mother Earth will continue.
Regardless.
And Mother Earth is going to do what Mother Earth needs to do to continue. The worry is how many humans will be able to adapt so that there will be a good outcome. But the more that people could do it up front, the better that more will participate in a good outcome. Those who reject it are going to suffer the most because they're not going to be ready. They're not going to be ready to make transitions. They're not going to be ready for sacrifice. We may not have all the things that we have today, that we have right now. And some people are going to struggle with that. I can't just go to the supermarket and buy my food. You know, you see the movement of people trying to grow their own food, even here in the hood, trying to grow their own food. And that's what they say it's going to take. They were going to have to go back to old ways to making things happen. Probably like in the time my abuelos in Mexico, where some of the people knew how to grow their own food, you know. And those are some of the technologies we probably need to rediscover or to
Right.
promote,
Right.
you know, and, so I have hope. I know it's going to get better, but even back in the 60s, they used to say on a political side, they used to say it's going to get worse before it gets better. And I've heard that so many times used, it's going to get worse before it gets better because there's going to have to be a change, a process, and that it's like having growing pains. It's not going to be easy.
Right. That's the part that I've always struggled with, and it's just like we always wait for us to be injured to go to the doctor,
Yes.
for us to have some sort of disease to go to the doctor, right? We have to be broken down to pieces to say, we need to do something about this situation, right? And then there's the preachers that are always constantly telling people like, come on, we need to do something today. And then we're like, nah, dog, I'm too busy, drinking my little Beastal,
No.
smoking my little doobie,
Oh.
like playing my little video games, whatever it may be. And I just find it really interesting how we're like that. Like, I don't know, we're like fundamentally lazy or something.
We're not proactive enough.
Right. Right.
We're not designed to be proactive. We're designed to rely on the system we see around us to provide.
Just gimme. So, at what point did you get into the native indigenous traditions that have made you into the man that you are today?
So, I will say this, since childhood, I always had, despite being physically a mestizo and probably looking more gringo than anything else, and because I have that Lawrence, there is a mix there.
Right.
But in my spirit, I've always had certain experiences since childhood. They all had to do with native and ancestral, my ancestral
DNA.
native background DNA. And I knew through dreams I had as a child that one day I would be led back to two native cultures in Mexico, and that one would be my dad's and one would have to do with my mom, but it would start off with someone from the north, like from the plains, like what you see in movies, the guys on horses chasing buffaloes and teepees, and that's exactly what happened. Right, from the political Chicano movement, I got involved with the American Indian movement, but with the ceremonies. And so my first teacher was a Lakota Sioux medicine man. And then along with that, I met a Chicano Huichol, a professor at Cal State Fresno, Carlos Gonzalez, who became a teacher of mine in ways from Mexico. A good friend of mine, he passed away, Frank Gutierrez, was a professor here at East LA College. He's the one who made all these connections for me.
Okay.
He was one of the first Chicano study professors at East LA College back in '68. And so he moved over into that movement and took me and a number of us into that movement and kind of rediscovers our indigenous roots. And it's not just a discovery of roots or, hey, this is a tribe I descend from. It's also a way of living, a future way of living based upon ancient wisdom and understanding. It's about healing. It's about mind, body, spirit, and heart. It's metaphysical, it's physical, it's all of those things.
Right. So, can you tell me, like the history of the circle? Like, is there like a principle that is within the circle that I want people to be able to understand? Like, we're talking about the circle, and we really have no idea what the circle is, right? So what is this? Why is it called the healing circle?
The circle, okay, so first of all, mainly we call it the circle of life. Because in the circle, there's no beginning, there's no end. It's like the universe, it's everything. Any one of us can move to the center of that circle and therefore be the center of the circle or the center of the universe. In a sense, we are all our own universes because we all have our own path, but we're all interconnected at the same time. So the circle itself mathematically represents eternity, beginning without end, to use that Catholic term or Bible term. It's duality to start off, because when we sit in a circle, like when we're gonna right now go into the men's circle, we're all men, so that's one truth, but we all have a different path in life, and that's another truth. So that's duality, two things right at the same time, just by sitting there. Then the circle can be divided up into four ways. People can say like the compass, north, south, east, west, but we would prefer to say that north is the direction of the elders, east is the direction of the men, hombres, south is the direction of the children or the youth, and the west is the direction of the mujeres, the women. And there I'm using the Tolteca understanding of the four directions. Other people have a similar one, and some other tribes like Cherokee have a different understanding, but it's still about the community, about familia, about women, men, children, elders, our interconnectedness, our need for each other, the energies that come from these different directions. And then to complete it, there's 7 directions, in that there's what's below us, Mother Earth, what's above us, the sky, and in the center represents all of that. And if you will, a creator, whatever your concept of a creator or a creation is, that kind of combines all of that. And so that's kind of, in a nutshell, things about the circle of life.
In a nutshell, we've described what a circle is, how it originated. Where does the healing come into play?
So, for example, tonight, it can be done in so many different ways. Tonight, being a men's circle, we have found that in this process, we can use the talking circle method, where everyone's given a chance to share, can also be healing. Now, I've been in talking circles when in the American Indian movement, we were trying to decide certain things. And everyone was given an opportunity to share their thoughts. And then at some point, we may take a vote or by consensus and arrive at a decision. And it's much more than that, but just, in a nutshell. Well, for men tonight, we've learned that it's also a place of confidentiality. You don't violate the sacredness of that circle, so what is said there stays there. And men have come to learn, I can come here and I can share. I could share, I'm angry with my children, with the woman in my life, with my family, with my friends, and blank, blank, blank. Or I could come and share pain and loss. And Jesus, as well as I do, men as a society, for the most part, are taught, suck it up.
Indeed.
Move on. And here we give permission to each other as brothers to share our struggles, our pain in life, and our joys too. Because we need to hear some joy also to kind of balance it out.
Right.
The joking we do sometimes, it's all part of it. So so for hombres, for men, it's very healing that way. And so then the healing part of the circle is the female part of the energy of the circle. And it shows men, we also have female in us too. And we need the female part to help us to heal as men, to be more complete as a man. We have our male energy, but we also have a little female, just like mujeres have a little male in them too. And we have to discover how to work with these energies to utilize our total potential, to being full human beings in every aspect.
Beautiful. And to just kind of touch on some of the stuff that he was talking about in sharing, right? This circle where a lot of healing occurs has been like instrumental in my own healing, in my own discovery of who I am, who I want to be, how I want to treat women in my life, youth in my life, even elders in my life. I mean, I kind of always understood that elders were wise and that I should respect them, but I think it was when I met you that I really allowed myself to be like, hey, listen, but just don't listen because you want to talk.
Yeah.
Like, listen because you want your heart to grow a little bit. You know what I'm saying? And I feel like this circle has really allowed me to become more full in a more human sense. And I started being a little bit less hateful and a little bit more open and loving. And I used to be kind of like a very narrow-minded individual, to the point where it was like, I have to be right. And now I'm just like, maybe I'm not so right after all. Maybe I want to go ahead and give this guy an opportunity to explain himself. And let's chop it up. Let's have a conversation. There's another aspect to your work that is also healing work.
Correct.
You work in prisons, right? And most of the times, you know, there's this understanding of prisoners that they're the worst of humanity. Essentially, they represent the worst, and that's why we put them in cells. When you look at an inmate and you have a conversation with them, just like you and I are having right now, what do you see? What do you feel? What do you hear?
My heart tells me, and the program tells me, so a mental process, I'm talking to a man, I'm talking to a human being. I come in there with no judgment. I couldn't do healing work if I was judging them. I don't ask them what they did. I never ask them what got you into prison, how many years you have, how many years you have to do. I never make that a topic. Now, they may choose to share that with me at times, but I never make it a point. That's something very personal to them, and sometimes they don't even share it with each other. I just deal with them as a human being. I talk to them about what the program's about. I talk to them, in that program we talk about childhood trauma, trying to understand it and how to heal from it. And so that's how I come to them. How do we move forward? How do we heal? And when I talk, I'm not like a maestro where they're only my students. I'm also a student of life too. So I share my life. Now, there's a thing in social work where they say you don't get too familiar. Well, I have to develop relationships. I believe the way I've been trained to get anywhere with them.
Sure.
So I share with them my life. Now, I don't give them my address. I don't give them my phone number. I give them the name of our organization. But I'll share things. Hey, you know what, brothers? Here's a teaching. Well, guess what? This is something I did. A path I went down. And I'm not gloating. You know, I tell them too. I go, if I share anything I did in the streets, please don't think I'm trying to compare my street creds with yours. I'm just sharing experiences I had. And I tell stories that way. And I find I get a big return when I do that. Because now they can connect to, okay, he knows a little something about this and that. He knows maybe a little something about what they're feeling. You know, so we're making connections.
Right.
And I'm more interested in them, their spirit, their heart.
Right.
And can we do something to help get them to kind of relook at the way they've been doing things, the way they've been making decisions and choices. And maybe they're already on this path, and maybe I'll just be another helping hand. Maybe the program I represent will be another helping hand for them to keep moving forward.
For sure. You know what? And I definitely agree with the whole idea of like, you have to open yourself up first. You have to be vulnerable. Otherwise, how am I going to trust you? How am I going to heal if you're not willing to show me what you have beneath the face mask? I'm the type of person that I hate seeing the face mask. I get it. We're in a professional setting. You're out doing your business. Cool. But if you want to get to really know me, you have to remove it. Because I want to be able to remove my face mask and tell you exactly what I'm about, who I am. And when you're doing like really sensitive healing work in the prisons, us at school with our kids, you have to be real, you have to be genuine, you have to be authentic. And I really hate that these schools tell you not to do that, right? And it just shows you really where they're at in that work.
You know, me and a brother of mine, we were taking anthropology at ELAC, and our goal was to become anthropologists. We didn't do that, but his brother made it all the way, went to Yale, became an anthropologist. Wow. He went and studied with a tribe down in Chile.
A Chicano guy?
Yeah.
Wow.
But I gotta tell you, and they say this about PhDs, that it fries your brain. And he came to visit and we were at one of their family gatherings, and I knew him, and I talked to him, and his brother told me, he says, so what do you think about my brother? Did you notice the difference? I go, yeah, man. I felt like he was studying me when he was talking to me. He says, yeah, he can't seem to pull out of that. It's like he automatically he's analyzing everybody. It's like he's a talking head, and talking heads they may know a lot of things up in the brain, but I've learned in Indian ceremonies, because I've been through it myself, the brain is the first thing that will trick you and make you run out and make you turn from what you know to be true in here. And I'm not saying that one governs over the other one, but there needs to be a balance.
Right.
And I'll tell you this, the men I work with in prison, they want someone who listens. When I work with youth, what do they want? Someone who listens. When I work with women, what do they want? Someone who listens. Not all this, I have all the knowledge, and talking and talking and talking away. If you can't connect here, I don't have a value. I haven't bought into your process if there's no real human connection.
Right. I agree, definitely. Who has been the most memorable inmate? Obviously, we don't have to give any names or anything, but what was it about that individual that you just like, wow, I'll never forget?
There's 3 that come to me.
Okay. Why?
Well, so Tobias and Kenny, I just had them at a healing conference because they got out last year.
Nice.
One of them, his sentence timed out, and the other one, the governor commuted his sentence. There's actually a third one, I'll mention him right now. Tobias, I recognize Tobias and Kenny being strong leaders in prison with the guys on really being on point with, we're here to do work to transform ourselves. Tobias nearly shot himself in the foot. He went before the parole board and he did what he wasn't supposed to do. He sounded like he was retrying his case, which they don't want you to do that. He really wasn't, but he said he prayed on it and he really felt he had to tell the truth, but the whole truth of the story, which he knew that they might see it the way that they were seeing it. You're not here to retry your case and you sound like you're doing it, so there's a real good chance you're not gonna get out. And he told the head of the parole board, he said, I understand that, but there's a little more to the story and I prayed on it and I feel I have to tell the truth, the whole truth. So you can understand why I did what I did. Even if the truth means I gotta do another 28 years.
Wow.
But there was other elements, they kicked in and they reviewed, they asked him a few more questions and they granted him. This man cried with one of the wardens at one of our last meetings in prison, because this one warden, she has a heart and she did things to help him out, all the right things to get to where he could get out. I remember Tobias told us one day, he says, he's African-American gentleman, and he says, I was doing this, I was doing that. In prison, I discovered Islam, I got into it, it saved me. He said, and then I started joining groups like this to heal. And a Muslim brother had to tell him, Tobias, you're a very strong orator, but we're not here to recruit these guys because they all believe what they believe. You have to learn how to fine tune your voice.
Right.
He learned that. Then he went to the yard and learned people have opinions. And he says, what you have to learn is to fine tune what you believe, but how to work with others. And the way he put it is that he said one day he was on the yard and he noticed that on this end of the yard, all the Muslims were complaining. So he went with the Christians and all the Christians were complaining. And all the philosophers, they were all complaining. And then as he puts it, he walked to the other end of the yard, all the Muslims and Christians and philosophers were seeking solutions and working together. So that made a real strong point to me. Kenny, he just, Kenny's a Crip. Kenny says, I'm still a Crip, but I don't gangbang. He says, I'll help any Crip homie. I will help them. I will help anyone. And he's out and about. He's working at a transition home. His passion is to be a chef, but he wants to create his own school where and me and him are about the same age. He wants to teach young guys how to dress. He doesn't like the saggy pants look. He wants to teach them a street style of dress that me and him are familiar with from back in our day. And it's kind of funny, you know, but well, I know what he's saying is he wants to teach him a certain sense of self-pride along with learning how to be a chef. And I mean, he's got a plan.
Yeah.
They both have a plan. And then there's this man, Omar. Omar's a man who's never getting out. He just, unless something radically changes, even with the new restorative justice laws, he's not going to get out. He's the man who would walk into the room when we're going to have our inmate group meetings, smile on his face, sincere smile. How you doing, Omar? That's his name. And he would always tell me, I'm blessed, brother. And one day I asked him, brother, how can you say that? You've been in here since you were a teenager, and you're almost my age, and you're never getting out. He says, brother, I could choose to surrender and be a prisoner in my mind and my spirit, or I could choose to be free. And so that was his strength, his spirit, that you could feel it. That inside he feels free. And it's wow. You know, it's just, how can, I don't know if I ended up in prison if I could ever get to that level of feeling free, knowing you're never getting out. That's, whenever I'm having it hard, I think about him. It's real amazing what he can say and do.
That's very inspiring and very deep, and I feel like moments like those are the moments where you realize that the spirit is true, at least in that context, in our reality, because you see it moving in people and you're like, how do you find hope in a hopeless place? It's the spirit that even though you're scraping through the ground, it finds a way to say, wake up, you have another 20 years to live. Because in a sense, there's going to be so many more people to walk in through those cells. And perhaps they need to meet Omar so that Omar can give them the hope that they might get out and go back to their kids, their families, and be able to live better lives. Last question of the day. So, the whole purpose of the show is to be able to give our viewers some principles, some tangible things that they can leave with today and be like, you know what? I'm going to practice X, Y, and Z, and I'm going to live a better life after this. What are a couple principles that our viewers can utilize leaving the show and be able to,
follow your passion. Follow your sacred path, which is your passion, your gifts, your talents. Some it's easy, some it's not so easy. But use it, whatever it is, use it in a positive way, in a healthy way, in a safe way, in a secure way. That's healthy, safe, and secure for you and for others around you. Some people are meant to be poets. Artists are meant to do a painting. Musicians are meant to sing a song. Mathematicians are meant to do math. Follow your passion. I know some of us have no clue. Some of us are called idiotas ever since we were yay high, and we bought into it, and we think that's all we are. We may not tell other people that, but inside, we're kind of living those prophecies people laid upon us, and we need to break those chains, because they're chains that imprison us to a negative pathway. And so, maybe what we need to do is going to different events, do different activities, go to school, try a different kind of school or class or subject matter, go to a community center, don't go to just necessarily typical school, go to an event at a community college, some community event, and see if something triggers, sparks something inside of you. Now there's a few who are just so disconnected, disjointed, who can't believe in themselves. Sometimes we need counseling to help us to rediscover, reignite our spirit. Sometimes we need to come to a circle like tonight, like for instance for the men. There's also a few women's circles around. We need to come something. We try to do what we can for the youth as well. We used to have a youth circle around here. We need to kind of rebuild that back up, where you can come and feel comfortable, hear what other people are about, and then explore, this is what I think maybe I'm about, or I know this is what I'm about, but I don't know how to give voice to it. You got to network with other people. Or maybe you have a bunch of ideas. You just need to kind of like test the water somewhere. We've got a bunch of people that come to our circles that do, you know, some of the latest stuff and some real old school stuff. And connect with you, because you're connected with people that know about how to experiment and see what we're about. And I know, yeah, we're not all art. I mean, it's easy. The musicians, the artists, the poets, to point to them. Some of us are good librarians. Some of us are good, maybe police officers in a good way, in a healthy way. But you have to follow your passion. You have to try to connect with who am I inside? What am I about? And what do I want to do with that? I don't know if that helps.
That's excellent. Thank you so much for showing up today. I'm really grateful for this, and I really hope that you guys can listen to this, utilize it, and remember that today's a day that you can recraft your path. If you feel like you're going away where you shouldn't go, listen to yourself, man. Listen to your spirit. Something's gonna happen where you get that red flag and you're just like, Charlie, I'm not gonna do this, right? Yeah. But you know best. I don't. Yeah. That's your life. Yep. It's always up to you to decide. Right. Thank you very much for showing up today. I do want to give a shout out to the Women's Center.
East LA Women's Center.
East LA Women's Center. They work with women who have been, who have faced psychological, sexual abuse, all sorts of abuse. And to me, that's tremendous work.
Yes, yes.
Number two, men are the main perpetrators of this violence in women's lives. And for them to allow me to have this conversation, film in here, all for free, and also to allow us to have that healing circle of men, that's tremendous. When I think about what love is, even when people hate you, that's exactly what that is, right? So we're living it, we're working through it. Guys, have a wonderful day. I'll see you guys next time.
Gracias.
That's it.
Okay, well, great. It was great. You did a good job, Jesus. I like your skill and the way you go about doing it, and your lively, your energy, your spirit. But let me rush.